Hello again, this video will guide you through the Black Zenith Winter Orb build. Winter Orb is not a popular skill as it requires you to constantly stop and channel it to keep your damage up. Black Zenith gloves are rarely seen too, as they introduce cooldown on the socketed skill setup. You can, however, combine these two items to create a decent build with auto-aim. By socketing a channeling projectile spell skill in these gloves, the cooldown will not apply as long as you keep channeling it. It would make you stand still in one place, so that's why you will need the cast while channeling support gem linked to a mobility skill that in our case is Lightning Warp. We have selected Occultist due to the extra power charge and AoE with Forbidden Power, cold resistance reduction with Void Beacon, cold damage, freeze immunity and damage reduction with Frigid Wake, and Vile Bastion to prevent stuns and to never run out of ES, which plays the role of mana. We can expand on the stationary gimmick with Ralakesh's Impatience Boots to have all the charges always up. This is followed by Malakai's Loop for more maximum power charges, Tullfall Wand to take advantage of added cold damage with no downside, and Badge of the Brotherhood. The damage of Winter Orb, despite being supported by basically one gem, will still deal tons of damage because Black Zenith provides it with 150% more damage and 4 more overlapping projectiles. You can also corrupt these gloves, with a lucky outcome. These can increase the gem level of Winter Orb by 4. The defenses of this build are not particularly high. It mostly relies on evasion, reducing enemies' accuracy, spell suppression, low block chance, Frigid Wake, and freezing your opponents. Physical damage mitigation can be gained from the soul of Tukahama and a bit of armor sourced from gear. It's hard to measure clear speed here. The build is fast, but interacting with anything puts you on a 4-second cooldown. It's hard to control and the character often gets stuck in the terrain. It's fast only on certain maps and against specific content like Delirium where you don't need to stop, or Expedition where you need to stop for a while anyway. Boss damage is high. It deals overlapping damage with high penetration and crit chance. It is expensive, but not overly so. The build uses a lot of unique items. Some of them are mandatory, others simply overshadow any other possible option and it would be foolish not to take them. Because of this rigid gear setup, it may feel like there is no room to improve this build further, but to our benefit, there are a lot of corrupted implicit mods that you can use on your cheap items. With Frostbite, Elemental Weakness, Void Beacon, and Exposure you can reduce the resistances of your enemies by a lot, and with the Eye of Malice's mod that increases their resistances by 50%, these will be further lowered instead if that's already a negative value, which it is. It applies exposure and grants some fire and cold resistances. You can also corrupt it for a chance of getting +1 to maximum power charges. Tullfall adds a lot of cold damage to spells and increases cast speed, which has an impact on Winter Orb. You cannot lose power charges so the downside does not apply. You can corrupt it for up to 10% elemental penetration which would be the best outcome. Malakai's Loop. The most important modifier is the one that grants you +2 to maximum power charges and increases your damage per power charge. Normally you would constantly lose a lot of power charges to balance out this powerful addition, but in our case, this downside does not apply. We have used a lot of uniques with no life modifiers already, so you only need a belt and a ring with no such modifiers to benefit from up to a 1000 flat maximum life from Atula's Hunger. Having 5 blue sockets here is very difficult if relying on chromatic orbs. Try corrupting it or using Vorichi's research table. Ralakesh's Impatience fixes all your charges to always be at their highest possible count. It's a core element of the build as you will not lose or gain charges anymore. Black Zenith is where you will socket your Winter Orb setup. These gloves are designed for a very powerful projectile spell setup that you can cast only once every 4 seconds, but in our case, the spell is a channeling one, and you can continue casting it indefinitely if it's uninterrupted. Winter Orb is the only channeling projectile spell skill in the game, so it's the only option to exploit this feature. You can corrupt them for modifiers like extra level to socketed duration, AoE, or projectile gems, extra crit chance, and some hex on hit, such as temporal chains. Darkness Enthroned is probably the best choice for a belt if you have a pair of good Abyss jewels. You can socket such jewels with extra maximum life on them here. The Atula's Hunger will still grant you the life bonus. Badge of the Brotherhood Amulet extends your maximum frenzy charges limit from 3 to up to 11. That gives you a lot of cast speed and more damage. It's by far the best amulet. You're stacking a lot of power charges, and you can benefit from a lot of curses, so Anathema Ring makes a lot of sense. It extends your maximum curse limit to be equal to that of your power charges, granting you some cast speed at that. You want to turn your Hexmaster into an Inner Conviction Keystone with a Dominus-flavored Militant Faith. The downside does not apply, it simply gives you 30% more damage, like the Pain Attunement. Warrior's Tail can be socketed near infused to enhance nearby tattoos. The tattoo worth improving is the tattoo of the Ramako Makanga, which grants you an extra projectile, 2 with this jewel. You can make it 4 with 2 tattoos, some more skill points spent, and by putting this jewel near Perfect Agony. Watcher's Eye. Your auras are Grace and Hatred. Grace can get you some defensive mods, while Hatred can be used for more DPS. Most Hatred mods are excellent. Rare Ring and Belt should give you no maximum life at all. Instead, seek resistances, mostly lightning resistance, and attributes like Strength. You can obtain 2 extra maximum power charges from the skill tree, 1 with Anointment, 2 from a shield, 1 from Forbidden Power passive, 1 from a Helmet Corruption, and the last one can be gained from a synthesized rare ring. You may want to include expensive tattoos for extra projectiles. Find a Stygian Vice with no life mod on it, but a lot of missing resistances and strength instead. Lightning resistance is the most valued type of resistance, as other uniques grant you none of it. 1 rare ring will be used to fix your attributes and resistances. All you need are suffixes and 1 open prefix to craft mana cost reduction, so you should consider wearing the Cogwork ring, as it hosts 4 suffixes and 2 prefixes. Remember, you don't want the maximum life mod. You won't use a lot of jewels, 1 or 3 at most. These should give you maximum life, attributes, and resistances that you lack. For damage, seek critical adjacent mods, added damage to spells, or increased cast speed. These can be found on Hypnotic Eye Abyss jewels, and socketed in your belt. Dying Sun adds extra projectiles to your skills, increases AoE, and makes you take less fire damage. It's by far the best unique flask for this build. Rotgut gives you a long-lasting, around 30 seconds, onslaught. It will consume your frenzy charges, but you won't lose them. It can be replaced with a regular silver flask with a suffix for the reduced effect of curses on you. For magic flasks, select Jade, Diamond, Silver, and Life Flask. These should increase your crit chance, cast speed, and reduce the effect of curses on you. The Life Flask should stop bleeding and remove corrupted blood. Winter Orb, when socketed in Black Zenith, will behave differently. It will fire its projectiles all at once in all directions. It allows you to deliver damage faster, as the projectiles can shotgun a single enemy. It has a 4-second cooldown, but it only applies if you stop channeling. You can keep channeling it indefinitely and the cooldown will never apply. When linked to CWC, Lightning Warp bypasses its cast time, making it a relatively fast movement ability. Using it won't render you non-stationary, which is crucial for this build. You can use the Phantasmal one for even less duration. Link these with cast while channeling and power charge on critical support gems. With Vortex you will apply curses and Bone Chill, which will cause your opponent to take increased damage. The best part is, it's an instant cast skill and you won't have to stop channeling Winter Orb to use it. Link it with Bonechhill, Hextouch support, and multiple curses. Frostbite lowers the cold resistance of your enemies. Elemental Weakness lowers all elemental resistances of your enemies, including cold resistance. Enemies that are on low life, which is less than 50% of their maximum life, will take increased damage with punishment. Grace adds and increases your evasion rating, making you more likely to avoid attack hit damage. In this build, it's better than Determination because of Dread Banner and Enfeeble you already have. Hatred, in this build, grants you more cold damage. Herald of Ice adds cold damage to attack and spells while shattering frozen enemies, enhancing your clear speed. Link these 3 with Enlightened support to reserve less mana. Zealotry increases your spell crit chance and grants you more spell damage. You will also create consecrated grounds during boss fights. Here, it is a temporary aura that won't reserve mana but has a high mana cost. You can afford it with Eldritch Battery. Link it with Divine Blessing and Inspiration support gems. Steel Skin is a guard spell that stops bleeding and absorbs a portion of incoming damage. You should use Immortal Call instead if you have other ways to stop bleeding, since you have 3 endurance charges at all times. Assassin's Mark causes your target to be more likely to receive a critical strike that will have an increased crit multiplier. Enfeeble lowers damage and reduces the accuracy rating of affected enemies. Link these 3 spells with cast when damage taken. It will trigger them whenever damage is taken. Dread Banner is used only to lessen the accuracy rating of nearby enemies. It's less, not reduced, which scales well with Enfeeble or Grace. You don't need any other bonuses from Dread Banner other than the one mentioned already, so you might as well just increase this effect by up to 45% with Awakened Generosity support. Frostblink is another instant skill that you can use to move around when Winter Orb is on cooldown. It will keep you stationary. Kill all 3 bandits to receive 2 more passive skill points. Soul of Aracali may be the best choice. It reduces damage over time taken, especially chaos damage. You're already stun and freeze immune, so you don't need Brine King, but Solaris and Lunaris are both good. Soul of Tukahama for an additional 9% physical damage reduction may be the best pick, as you're vulnerable to physical damage, and you should stay stationary all the time. On the passive skill tree, pick power charges and critical strike nodes, cold damage, spell suppression, maximum life, evasion, reservation efficiency, and less duration to travel faster. You will need an Eldritch Battery and 1 more keystone to transform it into Inner Conviction. For masteries, get less skill effect duration as Duration Mastery, 2 Reservation Masteries, 1 for increased aura effect, and 1 for increased damage per aura on you. Allocate Suppression Mastery to make the chance of suppressing spell damage lucky, an extra 50 life as Life Mastery, Elemental Mastery for at least -18% to resistances from exposure, Charge Mastery for increased damage per charge, Cold Mastery to cause enemies to take increased cold damage each time you freeze them, and Critical Mastery for extra crit multiplier against unique enemies. That is all for this guide. We hope it was informative. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.